Jonathan, do we have anything?
Yes, we do, Chair. The three members that we've got apologies from is obviously Councillor Thomas, who has resigned following the change of political control at Merthyr, Councillor Kate Carr, and also Councillor Rhys Good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Can I ask if members have any declarations to make? And I'll kick off in that since the last meeting, I've been appointed to the board of Cardiff City Transport Services, also known as Cardiff Bus. I have already informed the monitoring officer in my register of interests. Anybody else, anything to declare and/or for this meeting? Grand. Minutes of the previous meeting then. I will take it that everyone has had a chance to read them. So any comments on the content or the correctness of in terms of record? I see no hands up, so everyone's happy that there are a record, good record of the meeting. Thank you very much for producing them. I think, am I right, Jonathan, in reading this, that item 4 is the sort of the actions that fall out of that meeting?
That's right, Chair. Yes.
Right. So if we then proceed to item 4, which is on page 13 of the meeting pack, then really I'd like to know if anyone has any comments on the actions. I think there's been some pretty good progress there as far as I can see. Jonathan, do you want to lead us through those? Jonathan, would you like to lead us through those actions?
Yes, Chair. I'll just take through those. Yeah, there was one, Chair, which was so can you just give me a couple of minutes?
Sure.
Sorry, I just need to. Thank you. Sorry.
I think it's on page 14 of the pack.
That's right. Sorry, I was on another page. Here we go. Yes, we did sort of talk about having a paper to a future subcommittee meeting, setting out the governance structure. There was a wider context to what was discussed. So officers are recommending it's taken forward as a training and development opportunity. So in essence, it's the investment framework. So you're taking it from sort of right from the sort of beginning where it's sort of, you know, from its initial stage to sort of all the way through to how it progresses. So that was really the thinking behind that, and that would achieve more in essence than sort of just providing a governance structure. So that was sort of in discussions that we had that it would be useful to sort of provide members with more of a sort of bigger picture of it. That was really the thinking. The longer term internal audit plan, that's already, I think it was mentioned at the meeting, funnily enough, that it's sort of this year's internal audit plan's already been agreed. So that needs to be taken forward, developed sort of for next year. The third one was that we needed to liaise with senior officers in terms of a briefing session for subcommittee members for risk management. We provided that on the 6th of September, and I hope that sort of met everybody's needs. And then, yeah, the final one sort of links in with the first one, which is links in with action 1 in terms of the training session. We would get in touch, obviously, with members to provide that.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Any comments around the table? I see no hands. Andrew.
So thank you. Just going back to the first actions, I just wanted to comment. I think that action is quite important, and in a different context, Chair, you will recall our keen interest in being clear over the articulation of a governance framework. And I see this action sort of really sort of helping us understand that. And I mention this at this point because I think I want to make some comments when it comes to the forward work programme in respect of our responsibilities in relation to governance. And the first step for me is getting a better understanding of what the governance framework looks like and how we interact with that. Thank you.
So how would you see that developing, Andrew?
Well, if it is a presentation that is some form of deep dive, I and maybe yourself, Chair, would want to help officers pick out the correct topics to address in that regard, because I think we both have some clear sort of requests here in terms of what we need in order to understand the key elements of governance framework, what, for example, the other committees do, how we interact with those other committees, and then in particular relation to this committee, what the key control policies are, and then how we oversee those control policies. So, for example, this organisation is exposed to a number of financial risks, whether they be credit risk, investment risk, market risk, etc., etc. So I'd like to understand how those risk elements are controlled via policies, who is accountable for those policies, and which committee oversees those policies, so we can understand, the various components and how the plumbing all fits together.
Good. So that would work out in some sort of workshop between a wider group and just officials producing the right answer for it, what they perceive as the answer for us. I think that's a sound move. Any comment back from that? No reactions? Happy with that? Liam, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we come up with a work programme shortly. The work programme is there to set out the sort of standard items, the more sort of workshop items that Andrew's referring to there. We would take members' needs on that in terms of what they wish to see. So absolutely, we can bring something like that forward, maybe to the January meeting.
Okay, and I think one of the comments Andrew did make was that both he and I share this experience elsewhere, and we found it useful to be able to contribute early in the process. It's developing something so that there isn't work being done that presents something that then gets challenged. The sort of, I suppose it's co-production of it in the early stages, what we're trying to achieve. So conversations and workshopping, outside of formal meetings would be a good way to help that move forward. So thank you for that. Any other comments on the action log? Sue? Sue? Sue, we can't hear you. You had your hand raised. Still muted. No, nothing from Sue, even though hands raised. I can't take that. Anybody else? I'd just like to make a comment on the risk workshop, which I thought was very good. But I'm not sure it went high enough. It was very good at looking at the detail of the process of identify or capturing risks that have been identified, storing them, great. I thought that app approach was excellent, and something you could even take to market. But at the very high level, the big organisational risks, I think we discussed those very briefly at the end of that meeting and said that there was a piece of work to be done for this committee looking at the very strategic risks that the committee faces. How can we pick that up as a further piece of work, please? Liam.
Absolutely, Chair. So the corporate risk register, there's a risk management standing item for each meeting. So ultimately that will be an update on the corporate risk register each quarter as standard, and then anything else that the committee deems is useful. Given the fact that we did a briefing session in September, we didn't include it that one, and that we've got further work to do on it. We didn't include it on this agenda. Absolutely, the standard agenda has been very good.
Good, thank you. Can I just do a check to see if Sue is able to speak to us? She raised her hand a minute ago, but it's gone down again. No, okay. Anything else then on the action log? I note that item at the minute 5.3 of the minutes of the meeting say that the risk register is a standard item on our agenda. But I don't see it on the agenda for this meeting. Is that an oversight?
Back to my last point, Chair, we bring something on risk management to each meeting. The fact that we did a briefing session, we felt that covered off the need for risk management in this cycle. But take your point that we could have brought a corporate risk register paper as well, but it would be a standard.
Yeah, I think just as a piece of advice, I think that even though we're not going to talk about something, let's have it on the agenda so we do recognise that it is in our purview all the time. So it may well be that we decide we're not going to cover it, and the item could be, risk register will not be covered this meeting. That's fine, but we never forget it, and I think that's important. And it is important that link here. The minute from the last meeting says clearly that the risk register is a standard item on every agenda. So let's not miss those. Okay, Grant. Anything else on item 4? Okay, we'll move on to item 5. Liam, this is yours. And just to prove I read everything you send me, I can point out that your email on the cover sheet is incorrect. Your email address is incorrect. It's got a spelling mistake in it. But anyway, that's a digression. Liam, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good start. I can't spell my own name. Yeah, so the paper sets out the recommended work programme for the year. And is included as appendix 1 to the paper. So we felt that as a newly established committee, it's good practice to have a programme of work so that, one, you can check and challenge us and make sure that we cover in the whole range of the duties, but also to aid effective planning of the committee as well. So rather than a paper being brought to each committee, the appendix 1 will just be included in all future packs of papers in the same way that the action log is. So the programme represents a standard programme of work, but as I touched on earlier with Andrew's comments, there are options to carry out other workshops or add items on. This is just the standard work programme. From time to time, there may be a requirement for either bring an item forward or to push an item back to later meeting. If there is instances where this needs to occur, any changes and the rationale for them will be presented to members at the appropriate point within the agenda. And just then to take you to the recommendation, Chair, members are asked to note the work programme and consider any amendments that they wish to make at this stage. This will be a live working document, so if things fall on and off of the plan, then we can add them in, but it's just if there's any amendments that members feel need to be made at this point. So happy to take any questions or comments, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. I certainly find the appendix a good way of presenting what we're about, just capturing everything, the menu of all the stuff that we're going to look at across the period of a year. And we can add to that in any way, shape or form. Andrew.
Thank you. Just to pick up on Liam's comments, yeah, this is a pretty standard forward work programme for a council's governance and audit committee, which I understand. But clearly, we're not a council here, are we? So I do think it needs some further thought in terms of what are the areas which are non-standard for a council that should be included. And if I look at the governance section towards the bottom of the page, for me, that looks quite light. And I go back to my previous comments about, the governance framework to understand, sort of what that is and how we play in key elements in the governance framework, how those key components are operating into our forward work programme. But I have a couple of other points as well, just for information at this stage. If I look at the policies, which I can't immediately see on this page, so I am sure the organisation has policies in respect of code of conduct, whistleblowing, conflicts of interest, none of which sort of seem to appear on this forward work programme, which really sort of goes back to my point earlier on. What is the responsibility of this committee in terms of overseeing the various control policies across the organisation? And more broadly, what does a policy architecture look like? And I think those important elements of this committee at least needs to understand, and how then those policies are overseen, whether by this committee or others across the organisation. And one or two other minor points. I think I'm correct in saying that we have an outsourced internal audit model. I think there's an obligation of this committee to periodically review the performance of internal audit and make recommendations for CJC for the reappointment or termination of that function. There are various other points I could make, but in the interest of time, I'll stop there, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Can we, Liam, any response to that first off?
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for the comments. I think in terms of the controls that ultimately this committee is responsible for overseeing, it's the overarching internal system control, internal system control across the CJC. How you choose to do that versus reliance on internal audit and the work that they do versus things that you would like to scrutinise in more detail and sign off policies, for example, it is open to debate, I suppose. But yeah, so I take your point on the performance of internal audit. I think that is an important aspect that the committee needs to do. But ultimately, it's the entire system of internal control that you are responsible for providing assurance on. Relying on the work of internal audit is a key part of that, and we can look at other areas as well.
Thank you. I think Andrew listed a few policies that we may or may not be wanting to oversee. Is it worth just bringing that list formally back to our next meeting, just to say, for us to be clear that these are the policies that exist, these are the ones that are in the purview of this committee, and these are the ones that are not. So we've got absolute clarity, and then there may be even a sort of timetable that fits into sort of periodic review, whether it be annual or every 3 years or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that, Chair.
Okay, so if we can capture that as an action, I'd be grateful. Any other comments on the work programme? No, not see any hands raised. Excellent, thank you very much, Liam. We'll roll then on to item 6, the audited statement of accounts. This is on page 19 of the pack, and I'll ask Liam, please, to pick this up.
Thanks, Chair. So, firstly, can I thank a number of people for their hard work in getting the accounts to this point. So, firstly, colleagues at Cardiff Council for acting in their capacity as the accountable body during the reporting period, particularly Chris Lee in his role as Section 151 officer. Secondly, then the finance team at CCR, who joined us on the call this morning. It's a significant piece of work to prepare the accounts in any year, and this year has been particularly challenging due to the complex and novel nature of some of the transactions, but alongside the additional work that the finance team have had to do as we established the CJC as well. So these challenges have contributed to the extended period of time that the process has taken, but there are plans in place now to bring those timescales back in line for the 23-24 accounts and also the 24-25 accounts as well. And then finally, can I thank Audit Wales colleagues for their work in providing us as an organisation, but also you as a committee with the assurances that you need. So before I comment on the wider report itself, can I bring in Julie from Audit Wales just to report on the findings within the report, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name's, apologies, I missed the last meeting. My name's Julie Rees. I'm responsible for the financial audit delivery. I think in the appendices to Liam's paper there, you've got our audit of accounts report. We're required under ISA 260 to report to yourselves as those charged with governance matters relating for your consideration to the accounts. So we're going to set those out for you before you recommend the accounts are approved. And the report itself covers the status of the audit, the proposed audit opinion, the representations we're going to request from management and yourselves as those charged with governance, and then also bringing out any significant issues to draw to your attention, which will include any corrected misstatements and any other issues we want to bring to your attention. So just very briefly, because I'll take the report as read, but I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points, if that's okay. In terms of the status of the audit, it's substantially complete now. It's just subject to our final review of any post-balance sheet events up to the date the Auditor General actually signs, as well as any final checks on the signed accounts that we actually receive. The opinion we're proposing to recommend to the Auditor General is an unqualified opinion, and that's in Appendices 1. The schedule of the representations, like I mentioned, are in Appendix 2. We have included 2 additional representations alongside those that we request as standard. One was in response to the fact that every year we make a series of requests to those charged with governance and management relating to fraud, related parties, regularity, etc. We requested these back in September 23. So it's just an additional rep to just confirm there's nothing since we received those response initially to the time now that we need to take into consideration. And then we also request an additional representation on the prior period adjustment, which has been provided in the draft in the appendix as well. In terms of the output of the audit then, we've got no uncorrected misstatements to report to you today. There were a large number of corrected misstatements as set out in Appendix 3. The key points on those, the key points have been Liam's covering report has set out the draft, the final changes, but in terms of the key adjustments, I guess the valuation of the equity investments were initially on the incorrect basis. It had needed to be from carrying value to fair value. That had a number of implications on the final accounts, as well as the Innovation Investment Capital Limited. Initially, that was accounted for as an equity investment, and we needed to bring that in as a subsidiary instead. That also had a knock-on effect on a lot of adjustments. And there was also significant revisions required to the cash flow of the MERS, the expenditure and funding analysis, largely as a consequence as well of the adjustments above, but and the financial instrument note needed significant revision. So there's a large number of changes there, and I'm happy to take any questions on any specifics. We also have drawn to your attention a couple of significant issues around the quality of draft accounts. As Liam's acknowledged in his opener there, the accounts are becoming increasingly complex as the City deal grows. And previously, the production of the accounts has been heavily reliant on a very small team, which has afforded limited opportunity for peer review and segregation of duties, etc. So, and acknowledge in the recommendations and management responses, actions has already been taken to address those for going forward. And then we also raised some recommendations around the quality of the group account, in particular, and engagement with the group account auditors as well. Obviously, a City deal accounts for new interest. Consideration needs to be given to group accounting. And also then we need to think about how we engage with those group auditors going forward to ensure we get the responses we need as auditors of the group in a timely fashion. As I say, management have responded to the recommendations we've made there in Appendix 4. So I think I probably pause there. Obviously, there's a lot there, but happy to take any questions or pass back to Liam to complete item 6.
Thank you, Julie. One question from me. Are you happy with the responses you've had? You say you've had responses, you've seen actions. You're happy with what has taken place?
Yes, very, and yes.
So in addition to the expected unqualified recommendation, then we're in a good position.
yes, heading into the draft for 23-24 audit, I'm optimistic that a lot of the issues that have been raised are already being addressed. So,
thank you, Andrew.
So just picking up on the point you've just discussed. So there are some clear actions with timescales set out on, I think, page 24. And I do wonder, Chair, to what extent we should be looking for formal assurance for our next meeting that those actions have been implemented. Because the board attention has been drawn to some significant issues in respect of the completion of these accounts. So there's something there maybe we'd want to consider for our next meeting. But more broadly, to what extent should this committee be overseeing the finance function? And I'm thinking in particular about its resources and capabilities in order not only to deliver the next set of accounts, but also to manage the financial risks to which this organisation is exposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Agenda.
Morning, Chair. I think Kelly's sat alongside me this morning. I think he must have raised a point.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Apologies, we're sharing a screen this morning, so you've got both of us on the one. So morning, everybody, and Andrew, thanks very much for your question. I think you used the word then organisation, and I think it's really important to point out that we are now only just an organisation. So if you go back to 22-23 and the year that we're talking about for this accounting period, this, as Liam says, was under the accountable body. It was under the Cardiff Council model. So our Section 151 support at the time was brought in from Cardiff Council under that lead body model that we'd adopted. So as you can appreciate, since then, and having transitioned to the CJC, we've taken our own approach. We've built a team. We've got Liam as Section 151 officer, Hajinder as deputy. We've done a lot more work internally around action planning, resource planning, and hopefully you'll start to see the benefits of that approach, that internal in-house approach that we're now able to take as our own legal corporate entity. Come into the fore in future years. We did a lot of work. We got some external advice in as well in terms of just making sure that we had independence into our accounts, and we built that approach up, I think, ongoing. So hopefully you'll start to see some of those benefits come forward. I'm sure Audit Wales can comment on those in future years as well. But again, if you want to take a closer look at some of those internal controls that we've put in place since, then of course we'd be happy to share those with you. But it is important to note the change in context. 22-23 was before we became a legal public entity, and this was very much under the accountable body way of working. I just wanted to point out that distinction, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sherry. I personally, I must admit to being still quite confused in terms of the structures and the governance because of the shift from one entity to another and the rest of it. So anything that can help us understand that, or help me understand that better in due course, would be really, really beneficial. But that's not for this meeting. Andrew, can I just go back to you before moving on to others? Are you happy with Sherry's response there?
Yes. So thank you. I understood the transition. Transition.
Kelly, Chair, Kelly.
Kelly, yes,
sorry.
Yes, Kelly. The transition was challenging, and I understand the previous context and the current context. And I think it's whether it's a matter for this committee or some kind of training or deep dive session, it's to understand that transition, the challenges faced by the new organisation, and how we managed it. But my point still stands. I think about us being clear over our responsibilities of overseeing a finance function in a constructive, supportive way, not to undermine, but to really help the Section 151 officer actually manage a business more effectively on a go-forward basis. Thank you.
Yeah, I think extending that very slightly, there's some resource out here that could be of assistance early on rather than reviewing later on. And I think that's the approach we all really ought to try and take. Thank you for that, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Just to labour the same point, where we were on page 24, there was some quite overt criticism of the external auditors, and on. But I'm rather uncertain who they are, whether what role they played in the preparation and the delays. And what arrangements are going forward that's going to address those sort of timeliness and detailed concerns in the future.
Okay. Liam, can you pick that up? Is that your hand just popped up at that one, I think?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Chair. So the group of accountants were Baker Noyle, and we've engaged with them going forward to ensure that they understand the importance of engaging with Audit Wales in a timely manner.
Thank you, Liam. Sherry.
Hi. So considering we didn't transition to your own public body until April 24, the accounts for 23-24 would have been under the previous accountable body situation. Should we anticipate similar audit issues and findings, considering that the CJC team wasn't really in place and they're not really going to have been responsible for the accounts until 24-25?
Okay, come back in there, Chair.
Yep, please do.
Yes, so the 22-23 audit, Jerry, as you see, is coming to this meeting, so there has been a delay to it. So while the accountable body status was in place when the draft accounts were submitted, for 23-24, the work on that to prepare the draft accounts is currently being undertaken by the finance team. Even though it was still accountable body, the work to prepare the accounts is ongoing with a group to get those to Audit Wales on the 21st of October. So those capacity and capability challenges in terms of preparing the accounts have been rectified by the points that Kelly raised earlier, the size of the team, myself coming in with Jim as deputy. So there may be some overhang potentially in terms of some of the transactional things that went on, but in terms of the preparation of the accounts, that work's ongoing at the moment. So it's, even though it's an accountable body set of accounts, it's being prepared by the new arrangements, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay. And then one other question was, I think you mentioned there were, or it sounded like there were external auditors that were different for each subsidiary. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Is there any reason why you wouldn't use the same external auditor to do all the subsidiaries?
Yeah, Sherry, so just to confirm, the auditor that Liam has just mentioned, Baker Noyle, are in fact the external auditors for both CSC Foundry Limited and for CCR Energy Limited. I believe they've given notice now. I think their portfolio is increasing. So I don't think they'll be our external auditors for those two subsidiaries going forward, but it is the same auditor for both of those companies. And Sherry, I just wanted to add as well, thanks for your question. I think it's a really important one. You know, this is no criticism on the accountable body. Cardiff Council has a huge amount of work going on as Cardiff Council. And, you know, as best as we could, we worked together in a very effective way when we were under the accountable body. But I think, Chair, as you've noted a number of times, and Andrew, you've raised this point as well, this is a different level and a different nature of business. These transactions we're looking at are much more commercial. We have two companies, we have a limited partnership. Audit Wales, you've commented, Julie, many times, our accounts are very complex. And if you go back to 22-23, it was the year that CCR Energy was first developed. You know, these are very new and very different interventions in the Welsh Public Service. So I think the point that I'm making is all we've had to do really is to move to a format, to a framework that's much more fit for purpose and there's much more, I guess, appropriate for the nature of the business that we're undertaking. It is very different to a local authority business. And I think as we grow and mature now and we evolve into the new model, hopefully you'll see significant improvements and benefits to you as well as the Governance and Audit Committee.
Thank you very much. I think it's also important to recognise that from our perspective, you know, we're identifying the issues and solutions are being put in place to address them, and you know, and it's still work in progress, but it's going in the right direction, which is really important. It may take time, you know, and there will be speed bumps on the way and all the rest of it. So thank you very much for that, Gareth.
Hi, yeah, I'm Gareth Gates. I'm Finance Business Partner working with Ajinder and Liam. Just for clarity, there are three group accounts, or three entities that we consolidate into the group accounts: CCR Energy and CSC Foundry Limited, as Kelly stated, as are at the moment audited by Baker Noyle. But Innovation Investment Capital, which is the limited partnership that is the third entity that we consolidate into group accounts, those are independently audited by Blick Rothenberg. Audit based in London. So just for the minutes, just to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. I see no further hands raised. Anything else on this item at all from anybody? No. We're asked to. No. Okay. We're asked if recommendations of the report are agreed. There are 5 recommendations that we are asked to agree to. Are we happy to accept them? Jane, a point of guidance, do you need to put this to a vote?
No, thank you, Chair. We just have a show of hands, if we may.
So in favour, are we happy to accept what we've received? Thank you.
Chair, before we move on, could I just draw your attention to a comment that's in the chat? I can see that the lay member Sue Erickson has had some technical difficulties this morning. She's been in and out of the meeting, but we can see she's here. We can see her video is working well, but I think she's got problems with her microphone. Sue, you can perhaps nod if that's right. But Sue's put a comment in the chat that related to the action log. And if I recall correctly, it related in particular to the governance framework. And her comment was, can we have agree some target dates for priorities, particularly around member training and guidance relating to the governance framework?
I think that's very useful. Thank you for that, Sue. If we could at least add to the action log a further column with target dates on that, please. I think, Jonathan, if you can pick that up, that'd be very, very helpful.
Will do, Chair.
You got something else for us? No. No, there's something wrong there. So in that your hand is up and your box on the screen is illuminating as if you're trying to speak, but we're getting nothing from you. But thank you for that point about the dates. So where were we? We were about, I think, then to move on to item 7. Am I correct? Yeah, the external audit plan. Again, Liam, please to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. This is an audit risk report, so could I hand over to Julie to this report, please?
Thank you, Liam.
I think we're at page 180 of the or thereabouts of the pack, aren't we? Yes, yeah. 180.
Okay, item 7 is our audit plan. So this plan sets out the work we'll be doing to fulfil the auditor duties to deliver the opinion on the 23-24 City Deal accounts. Very briefly, it covers our statutory responsibilities, the materiality we'll be operating under, the audit risks we've identified so far and our proposed responses. It also sets out the timetable we'd like to pursue. Obviously, that's based on the assumption the draft accounts are received as expected now and they're of a good quality and robustly QA'd, etc. And also it sets out the audit team and the proposed audit fee. I'll only just pick up briefly on the risks. The risks in the report around management override, which is a standard risk that you'll see in all audit plans, accounts preparation, valuation of financial instruments, accounting from new projects and instruments, and group accounting all largely build on the report you've just seen, if I'm honest, in terms of those are the risks coming forward as we see them. And now we'll still have some further planning to do. So we'll report to you any further risks that emerge at a future meeting. But I probably wasn't going to say any more on the risks given the item you've just received that's probably explored those in sufficient detail. But happy to take any questions on any elements of the report itself.
Thank you very much, Julie. Any questions from anybody? We're all happy? And that's fine. We just accept that as it. Colin. Thank you. Colin?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, clearly they're broad strokes on here with Audit Wales, and I was wondering whether they're in developing these plans, whether there are any good practice, be that in England or further abroad, looking at Adrian Compton's recent statements about CJCs. We appear to be the front runner in Wales, but there's quite a bit of criticism around some structures which obviously we're currently building. But I would anticipate that there would be more developed growth models elsewhere that we could perhaps bring to our attention and perhaps feed into some of these processes, and Audit Wales could refer to those.
Thank you. Yes, we'll certainly take that away, and if there is anything to share in future meetings, we will. And I'll pick up that with my performance audit colleagues as well in terms of the wider, broader work we do.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin. Anybody else on this one? Thank you very much. There's no need for any action on our part on that. That's kind, Julie. Thank you very much for that. We're now, I think, at number 8. Again, Julie, is that back to you?
My colleague Colin and Alison had to send their apologies today, so I'll take away any questions you have on there. It's the performance audit plan, so any questions you have on the proposed plan, happy to take that away, and Colin can provide either a note or further detail at future meeting.
Okay, so on item 8 then, starting on page 198, any questions? The one thing that stood out for me on page 204 was that Exhibit 1, which says key dates, has no dates.
I'll ask Colin. Yeah, no, I'll pass that on to Colin for future.
Yeah, I recognise that it is kind of, they both items read as kind of work in progress, but there should be some timescales associated with them. Any other questions on item 8 from other members of the committee, then, please? No, all happy with that? Excellent, thank you very much. In that case, we will then turn to item 9, the annual business plan, which I think we'll turn to Kelly for. You're muted still, Kelly.
Sorry, Chair. So the report that you have in front of you is our quarterly performance monitoring report. We take these reports to the CJC to discharge the reporting requirements that we have to have under the joint working agreement. And of course, now as a public body, it's good form and good order to make sure that we put this clear reporting into the public domain. So it's a comprehensive report. As I say, it discharges those duties, but tries as well to give an overview of rounded activity that we're doing at regional level. So you'll see really this gives a rundown on our business plan and some of the objectives that we have contained within it. You'll see at paragraph 6, we've got some commentary there in relation to our investment reporting. We had a target for about 15 million spend in Q1. We're just shy at that at 14.6 million. We have, though, increased our forecasted spend because we were lucky to get the Transcend deal under the Innovation Investment Capital in the bag in the first quarter of the year. A really, really great investment, £5 million in a indigenous growth company based in Rhydom, Ystrad Monarch in Caerphilly, which is fantastic for us, doing some really important work to take forward the low carbon economy around their packaging devices there. So really pleased with that one. You'll see then in paragraph 8 onwards, there's some detail there about work we're doing to try and influence emergent UK government priorities. There's a lot of work going on at the moment to see if CCR can really influence the 5 missions of the new UK government, how we can play into things like GB Energy, the National Wealth Fund, the new agenda around devolution. It mainly at the moment impacts England. We feel that Wales should be in the frame and part of those discussions as well. So there's some work going on around how we can really take forward that influencing position, which I'm sure the committee will agree is really important. Just in relation to wider activity, you'll see that all of the subcommittees are now up and running. We've got one advisory board that we've just appointed to, which is a regional growth board that meets for the first time in a few weeks. I think investment board is on to its 5th meeting. We've had the first meeting of the joint overview and scrutiny meeting. Jane's attended the Standards Committee, and we've had several meetings now of the Regional Transport Subcommittee and the Strategic Development Plan Subcommittee. We've got an adopted case for change around that transport plan, and we've got a draft transport plan going into the committee now in the next few weeks. The delivery agreement is also prepared for the strategic development plan, and again that will go into that working group committee in the next couple of weeks as well. Just wanted to say, Chair, as well, because there's been some comments this morning about wider corporate policies. All of those are now starting to come together. There's lots of operational policies that we have to have in place, but some wider corporate thematic policies that are really important to show that we're making a bigger impact, like public sector equality, biodiversity, and things like child poverty, which I think, again, is essential. The CCR shows that we're making an impact against. Otherwise, why are we here? So that outward impact, I think, is starting to shine through. You'll see under paragraph 11 the 4 investments there that in the individual categories that we're making. The Transcend investment I mentioned, CCR Energy, which is about the ongoing demolition and remediation of the Aberthorpe Power Station site. Investment in sites and premises, which relates to the T Hotel development in Newport, and the Housing Viability Gap Fund, which continues to deliver as well. We did launch the Northern Valleys Fund, £50 million fund back in April as well, which is significant. And you'll see some of the wider commercial opportunities that we've now got coming forward under the Challenge Fund, and some really great activity now in relation to our venture scheme, which is starting to take technical boot camps out into all of our key sectors and clusters across the region. Non-investment, non-financial, non-performance activity, I guess, but paragraph 12, you can see set out there some of the wider work that we try and do all of the time around opinion forming, thought leadership, making sure that we go to relevant events. In fact, we stage our own, making sure that we are part of the nation building set of brands that are starting to step forward and shape Wales. I think that's really important. Paragraph 14, the transition to the CJC, as Andrew said earlier, didn't stop at the 1st of April. There's still a lot of work to do to bed in, and you can get an update there. AGS update at paragraph 15, and the risk register then at paragraph 18. And I think on the back of some of the really timely questions Andrew is asking, you'll see that risk register there is very much a project risk register. We also have an overarching risk register, which is about some of the global risks that we face, because we're dealing with market functions here in the economy, planning and transport. So again, we can bring that up next time and give a more comprehensive update. Again, there's a bit more information there just to round things off in relation to future targets around investment. And I just wanted to pick up a really important point there at paragraph 24. You'll appreciate that a number of the investments that we've made are evergreen. So we didn't ever want to be in the position where the city deal was just spending down the capital. I think the opportunity has always been about living off the interest. And you can see that as at the end of March 2024, there was £11 million repaid. I think, Liam, that increases to about £16-17 million at the end of March 2025. About 5 million that we've got in terms of interest holdings on balances. If you think that that is going to grow all of the time, we've got borrowing ability, we've got this new conversation with UK government. We should really be seeing this as the foundations now for a second churn of that regional investment fund, making sure that we've got money in the coffers to keep recycling and scaling the impact that we are making. So I just wanted to leave that with you, Chair, and just to pick up as well on a couple of the points that Andrew's making about navigation, orientation. I appreciate you're getting a lot of reports at the moment. There are probably standard for audit and governance committees, but because we cover such a vast expanse, again, we're really looking for you to hone in on the areas that you want to see in greater detail. And hopefully through some of the briefing sessions that we'll have all of the time, we can make sure that we develop the programme to really hit the mark in terms of some of the issues and challenges that you really want to dig into. So I'll leave it there, Chair, and very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kay. I thought it was a great report. And just then raised hundreds of questions in my mind as well, because these are things I'd love to know more about, but I'm sure we'll flush many of those out in coming weeks and months. So thank you for that. Any questions or comments? Andrew, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kelly. Clearly, your passions come over loud and clear as you introduced this paper, and I don't have any problems with paper itself, and it's just really going back to my previous remarks, and it's a question maybe for the Chair and this committee. You're asking this committee to recommend this Q1 performance report, and I find myself having difficulties with that concept. I think we can note the report. I say that because whilst you've explained the performance, this committee is yet to review the business plan, or indeed a review and improve it, or indeed, I'm unclear as to whether the performance you very clearly outlined is in line with expectations. So I just have a real quibble, and I appreciate I'm being quite pedantic here, but I want to understand more clearly what this committee's role is with respect to performance. Are we here to scrutinise performance, or are we here to really sort of understand the controls and governance around the production of this report, and that or not? Apologies there, got slightly sort of distracted, but hopefully that's of some help. Chair, all I'm saying, I think, in summary, is how does this align to our terms of reference, and are we sufficient information at the current time to recommend this report's consideration by CJC?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That's set me thinking while you were speaking there. I think in our formative stage, it's great to get this, to know and understand the complexity, the challenge, and the activity, and it's almost sort of an information item. But your key point about what is our function in relation to this report is a good one. And until we know that, then we can't really address the issue that we're being asked to, which is to recommend the report. So, Kelly, can I go back to you on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Andrew's right. I think the report is for noting at this stage, because you haven't been involved in setting the objectives, the business planning process. At this stage, you're at ground zero. What I think I want to suggest to you, Chair, if you deem this appropriate, is you continue to receive these performance reports, because I think it's really important that you build up that level of knowledge. You can see what's going on in terms of the wider organisation. And then the opportunity then is for you to become more informed and perhaps involved in the forward business planning process, which will be a critical one, because we're at the stage now, whereas rather than having annual business plans, we're about to set a 5-year corporate plan. We're about to set a 5-year medium-term financial plan. So as a new public body, a lot of this stuff is inaugural. You're at ground zero at the moment, so it's about knowledge building. But as we go deeper into this, I think it's about how we engage you in those processes. So as Andrew says, you're fit and informed to be able to comment further constructively in terms of how we take these things forward. Excellent. So we'll take this paper just for information at this stage, and we'll develop the other things. Please, Chair. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Andrew, does that satisfy your question? Your earlier question?
Yeah, but spot on, and I welcome the opportunity to work more constructively in collaboration with officers. I think that's an important role for this committee in order to support the development of his organisation. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Colin. Sorry, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chair. Yeah, it's such a wide spectrum to take on board, and I thank Kelly for her enthusiasm of the bigger picture we're now looking at, because obviously we live in Blaenau Gwent, to the further part away from the city deal as it was started, etc. And this new initiative now of the Northern Valley Initiative, I think, is welcome news, because obviously with the advent of the A465 now bringing connectivity back to the northern end of this actual region as such, will be like a breath of fresh air. And hopefully there will be investment in those areas, because believe me, since the demise of Eberville Steelworks and the coal industry in our locality, we really suffered for a very long time. I know that Port Talbot is going through similar circumstance that we've had up there. Without being too parochial, we've had this problem for 50 years. We've had a lot of carrots dangled in front of us. We've had a lot of false promises, and we've had a lot of things that should and could have come to our area but have never come to fruition. And like I said, it is a generalising of where we are. And we will be as supportive as we can because I understand fully where we're coming from. But I'll emphasise again that public transport, connectivity, these are all things that possibly could be analysed in the future. And if we have got a forward work programme of any worthiness, this is a fluid document. And we did have a meeting of the Alliance as such, which we hosted in Ebervale last Friday. And Steve Whitlock was the man then that came and spoke to us with some enthusiasm about the way forward with this. And it's refreshing that I'm able to come to meetings like this and provide you with the background to where we are in areas like Blaenau Gwent. We are crying out for inward investment, and I am repeating myself, but with the new road connectivity, etc., it will be, like I said, a breath of fresh air. And something else I'd like to flag up, and you can appreciate where I'm coming from. The new road now that's going through a few different counties, but ironically, between Raglan and Swansea, there's no service station. There's no other people to stop. There's no other people to come and enjoy what we got to offer in the northern end. You know, we're quite close to one of the most beautiful areas with a national park. And you know where I'm coming from. There's more to Wales, and unfortunately, the corridor, which I think has become choked with traffic and is congested. But I really, really hope now that this will be the way forward for us in the future. I know I'm coming to the end of my political career, but hopefully in the future, it will be something we can all cling to and support accordingly. Thank you for that opportunity to say where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Kelly, I think you've got a response.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could just respond very quickly, because Councillor Cross is absolutely right. You know, we're still feeling the effects of deindustrialisation, and this is a long-term issue. So something like £50 million in the Northern Valleys Initiative will be really important, but it won't scratch the surface. And that's why I come back to the point that I made to the committee about having this approach to recycling funds to make sure that we can seed new investments. So if we can get a Fund 2 up and running with the proceeds from Fund 1, we've got the investment zone. You know, we've got potential conversations with pension funds, other institutional investors. Hopefully there'll be another round of the Shared Prosperity Fund to help seed some of these investments. But we've got to start bringing large scale investment into the region. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Cross, you know, thinking about the A465, leveraging that infrastructure. We just agreed a £45 million debt package with Oggy. You'll have seen that in the press, it's in the public domain, around digital connectivity, which will help with some of those strategic sites and premises. But when we go to events like MIPIM and UK Reef, we do get approached by hoteliers and others that can help us exploit that infrastructure of the A465. And I'm really pleased that we get such great support from Ellie and the team in your council in taking forward some of those conversations. But just so you know, Councillor Cross, you know, Pulse Plastics, they go from strength to strength up on the Rasa. That's one of our investments. And of course, you'll know about Apex in Ebervale as well, which is one of our equity investments, which hopefully will be rapidly expanding because they're a great company and really, really paving the way for additive manufacturing in the region. So thanks to you and colleagues at Blaenau Gwent for all the help and support you always give us.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a councillor, Kelly, it's very, very refreshing to hear, you know, that you are working with colleagues. I know they've got a major challenge, but you are right. The fear I have, and I'll be honest with you, that we've got some very good officers, and I just hope that they're not headhunted and go somewhere else, because you know where I'm coming from. It is difficult to get key officers in key areas, but I wish them all well, and hopefully they work together.
Well, I can't comment on that, Councillor Cross, because look where Liam's come from, Merthyr Council. So I'm not allowed to do that again.
No, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There's a bit of history there again, so we'll pass over that. We'll move on to Sherry. Thank you.
Hi, yes. Quick question for Kelly. I'm quite familiar with some of the funds, but one thing I'm not quite sure of is the Housing Viability Gap Fund. Could you just let me know what that is, for what the aims of that fund is?
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. So the aim of this fund is it started off as about a £40 million fund, and the aim of the fund really is to recognise, particularly across areas of the Northern Valleys, sometimes mid valleys, but we have issues in areas of Newport and Cardiff too, where we just can't get sites to the market. They're stalled. There's viability gap issues. You can imagine the Northern Valleys, can't you, in terms of undermining and the land conditions that we have. So we've had sites that have been allocated in local development plans for some time, but unless there's something to help solve some of the viability issues, those sites can't get taken to market. So that's what this fund does, essentially. It helps to unlock some of those block sites, which leverages private other public investment then in the actual house building. So we've got a number of sites across the region, and we're just about to take a report through the CJC now to repurpose some of the funds to essentially have another round of sites coming forward. So it's hopefully something we can run longer term, and we're trying to build more low carbon characteristics into that fund as well. But again, Sherry, if it's something you decide you want to deep dive into, we can look at that in future.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, excuse my dog in the background.
That's the same issue.
Thanks, Kelly.
Good, thank you. Anything else on that item? I thought it was really helpful, and it is a good read. So we'll just take that as for information, and then we'll develop some thinking as we get to understand. And one of the things that stands out for me is that some of the officials here have been working on this for what, 7 years or more now, and you know, you've got an awful lot of corporate memory and experience that some of us who haven't even been here for 7 months are trying to get our heads around, and there's a lot that needs to be done to help that. So anything you can do in that regard, we'll be really grateful. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on then to item 10, which is the 24-25 Treasury report. Liam, this is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report focuses on our Treasury management performance in Q1 of 24-25. So as a CJC, we've got all the same financial management and legislative requirements as a local authority. And this means that we must comply with the Prudential Code in relation to our Treasury management activity. So as such, we enacted a Treasury management strategy from the 1st of April 2024. And this report outlines our performance against that strategy in the first quarter of the year. It's important to note that much of the Prudential Code focuses on the risks associated with effective borrowing. At this moment in time, the CJC hasn't undertaken any borrowing, and therefore there's large aspects of the Prudential Code that are not applicable at this time, albeit they may be in the future. We have got those borrowing powers that Ken touched on earlier. It's just we haven't enacted them at this point in time. So the full report and the performance against those prudential indicators is included as appendices to the report. So I just wanted to bring members' attention to a couple of items. So the first is that we take a prudent and balanced risk appetite approach to Treasury management. And Table 1 outlines the mechanism that we use for lending. So other than surplus weekly operational balances, all of our surplus funds are lent to the UK Government Debt Management Office, which is lower yields than we could achieve elsewhere, but ultimately is very, very low risk. And this has resulted in interest yield in the first quarter of £729,000. So we've still received fairly decent yields in that regard with very limited risk. I'd also like to draw members' attention to the compliance section that is set out in paragraph 11, and particularly that during the quarter there was one instance of non-compliance with our Treasury management strategy, and that relates to a counterparty limit breach. This relates to a need to retain additional funds within our operational bank account for a large payment that was going out later in that week. The current SLA arrangements that we've got with RCT in terms of our transactional support for Treasury management activities allows for us to lend on a weekly basis, and therefore it wasn't possible to lend those surplus funds on a very, very short term basis to stop this breach from occurring. So we're urgently looking at ways that we can mitigate against that risk to stop that from happening again in the future. all of the principles within the treasury management strategy were fully complied with. So to take members to the recommendations within the report, Chair, the committee is asked to consider the 24-25 Q1 treasury management report, note the issue of non-compliance relating to the counterparty limits in Q1 that I just outlined, and finally then to make the regular updates will continue to be provided throughout the year. So happy to take any questions or comments on that report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Very helpful. Any comments or questions, please? Andrew.
Well, I'm going to sound like a stuck record, which may irritate some people. So it's really sort of back to responsibilities of this committee. So Liam's voiceover was very helpful. And what I understood him to say was that the performance was broadly in line with the Treasury Management Strategy, which had been previously approved. He's substantively complied with the code and prudential indicators. That was I think I heard him say that, but that doesn't come over clearly enough in this paper. And my suggestion is that if that is a key focus of ours, controls, governance, etc., that needs to be drawn out more clearly. Whilst I have some more observations on the performance itself, and in particular the reference to a low risk appetite, I think those comments are better made when we consider the Treasury Management Strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Liam, any response?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, they're fair comments. I think on reflection, it would be helpful to include the Treasury Management Strategy as an appendix to this report. It's back to Kelly's point earlier around the committee being at ground zero and ultimately this strategy being approved prior to the committee being established. So I think we could have done a bit more work in terms of bringing the committee up to speed with what's included within that strategy. So that's absolutely a fair point. And something, this is a quarterly report, and we can include some more detail within the body of the report, but as an appendix to the Treasury Management Strategy in future reports as well. So absolutely.
Thank you, Liam. I have one very small point, and that is on page 278. The opening paragraph says that it's about prudential indicators, that the CJC with reference to the following indicators, and there are no following indicators. First paragraph of page 278.
I think that's just the formatting issues. Apology for that, Chair. The indicators are included then as you come down in the tables, but they don't go on naturally from the paragraph. Makes sense.
It's probably not helped by the fact that I don't really understand prudential indicators either. So it's and again, I think that just highlights when we are producing information, there is an awful lot of detail, but it's also the way it has to be presented in a way that doesn't raise the questions. Now that's it's just a very small point, but that certainly confused me. So if you can just take note of that, that'd be great. Anything else on this one? No. Excellent. In that case, we're asked to do we have any comments on this and to note the recommendations. Or am I ahead of myself? No, so I'm ahead of myself on that one. Yeah, what are we on? We're on.
Sorry, Chair,
any comments and to note the recommendations of non-compliance and the updates to follow. Are we happy with that? All happy? Good, thank you. We'll move on. Then back to you, I think again, Liam, for item 11, the month 4 revenue budget monitoring update on page 280.
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the revenue budget position and the projected outturn as at the 31st of July. And focuses on the performance against the approved budget for the CJC statutory duties budget and the City Deal budget. The detail on wider investment fund performance was included in the report that Kelly talked through earlier on, the quarterly performance report. So table 1 within the report outlines the performance against the CJC statutory duties budget, and that shows an overall projected net underspend of £22,000. and explanations of the key variance analysis is included in paragraphs 7 to 10. Table 2 outlines the performance against the city deal budget, and this shows an overall projected overspend of £180,000, which equates to around 5% overspend on budget. Again, the key variance analysis is included in paragraphs 13 to 23, but there's just two areas that I'd like to draw members' attention to. The first one is in relation to the overspend on staffing, and this is largely due to the additional responsibilities that come with operating as a public body. So this has brought increased resource within the CJC, particularly in some of the finance function and the legal team as well. And we are investigating ways that we can utilise these resources to support capital projects where previously we may have gone out to external providers due to a lack of internal capacity and capability. We've now improved that capacity and capability so we can provide some more internal support for that. This would allow a contribution from the wider investment fund then to be made, which would reduce the pressure on the revenue budget. We just not quite at the point where we've put that into place. So hopefully that will naturally reduce the pressure on the revenue budget as we go forward. The other item I wanted to bring members' attention to was in terms of SLA costs, which have also increased significantly. And the reason for that is when the budget was signed off in January of this year, we were still working with RCT to understand what our requirements would be. So it was a broad estimate at the time. As further discussions we needed, so as we've established then as a CJC, it's become evident that support required would lead to an increased cost. I think one example is in relation to the number of internal audit days required, which was underestimated in the budget and subsequently been right-sized within the SLA. Which was there to increase costs. So yeah, then finally we continue to monitor and report progress against the revenue budget, and we are investigating ways to address any significant variances as the year progresses. Happy to take any questions and comments on that, Chair. Just one point to note, this is the month 4 position. Due to the timing of this committee and then the CJC committee in October, the month 5 position will be reported through to the CJC.
Thank you, Liam. And I think this is good information for us once again to help understand what is actually happening. Any comments or questions, please? All content? So we're happy to note that report. Thank you, Liam. That's very kind. We turn then to item 12, which is progress against the internal audit risk-based plan for 24-25, which starts on page 288 of the pack. Have we got Mark or Lisa to introduce us?
It'll be myself, Chair, presenting this report today. Mark isn't with us today.
Lovely, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. So agenda item number 12 is the progress against the internal audit risk-based plan for 24-25. And the purpose of this report is to provide members of the committee with an update on the progress made against the plan. So report reference 3 refers to a key responsibility of the Governance and Audit Committee being to oversee the performance of the Internal Audit Service in respect of delivering the plan. At report reference 5, it's detailed that in accordance with the public sector internal audit standards, the head of audit is responsible for delivering a risk-based plan of work, which covers as much of the organisation's risk management, governance and internal control environment as far as is practicable. At report reference number 6, we detail that the internal audit plan was presented to this committee on the 20th of July this year and it was approved, and the audit plan set out the audit assignments to be completed during the year, and that the aim of this was the outcome of the work would allow us to form an opinion at the end of 24-25. It's also noted that the plan needs to be flexible so that internal audit can respond to any change in circumstances or requests for new and emerging issues as they arise. So in respect of the current position, items 8 and 9 within the report also refers members to Appendix A, where we've got some detailed information in respect of each planned audit review, any key dates, the audit opinion when a final report has been issued, and the number of recommendations raised if applicable. So members will see today that as of the 16th of September, 14% of the audit plan has been completed to report stage, and this is summarised in Table 1. There are also 3 assurance audits that have either been completed to report stage or are in progress. I think that it's key to flag to members today that as this is the first year that the CJC has operated as its own legal entity, that the audit plan timings have reflected this by allowing sufficient time for processes to embed and for detailed information to be available to the audit team to work on and to undertake testing and form an opinion. So we've got 1 audit that took place in Q1, we've got 2 that are ongoing at the moment, with the remaining audits then scheduled to take place in Q3 and Q4. For the 1 piece of work then that we have completed to final report stage, members will see that we've given this a substantial assurance audit opinion. At item 11 within the report, we've provided a table showing the assurance categories for the audit opinions that we provide for reference information. And also then at item 12, we detail about the recommendations that we make, which are also detailed at Appendix A. But the year to date, based on the report that we've issued, there have been no internal audit recommendations made. But the monitoring of recommendations is an item that we will be bringing into this committee on a regular basis as and when recommendations are raised and are due for implementation throughout the year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. If I could start with one question, that's on paragraph 9. Very, very simplistically, 14% of the plan in almost 6 months. On a straight line basis, that suggests we're not going to hit the end of the year. But can you give us some assurance that we are going to hit end of year plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is why, you know, it's been mentioned earlier on in this meeting about the organisation being a new entity. And, you know, in April time, the key priority for us was signing off the small bodies return, which related to the previous year. That'd be done within a certain time. I think Q2, we tend to avoid looking at main financial systems over the summer period. Also, Liam was being appointed, so we needed to have a conversation with Liam over priorities and which audit should be undertaken when during the year. So, you know, we've deliberately allocated more audits for Q3 and Q4. So although, as you said, 14% based on maybe 5-6 months in isn't what you would think is proportionate. You would think we should be 50% of the plan. It doesn't always work like that, and we've got every confidence that we'll be as close to 100% of the plan by the end of the year.
Thank you for that assurance. Any questions or comments from elsewhere? No, nothing from anybody. On Appendix A, I have one further comment actually. For some reason, I made a note of fraud. Do we have any internal audit intention to look at fraud?
I think we haven't got.
Sorry, go ahead.
We haven't got a specific piece of work as a piece of work included within the audit plan for this year. But as I mentioned, the audit plan is flexible. So, you know, if there was an emerging risk that we needed to respond to throughout the year and work with colleagues on, then that is something that we would do. But at the moment, for the first year of the audit plan, there isn't a specific piece of work in for corporate fraud.
Okay, thank you. Liam?
Just on that point, Chair, but more broadly as well, I think this is where the benefit of a sort of a longer term plan that we will bring in terms of next year will really help. So you'll be able to see across a reporting period of 2 or 3 years, the broad range of areas that we will look at. Looking at this in isolation of just this year is just certain areas that we've identified as the highest risk for us to focus on this year, but we will cover the broad range of all aspects across a sort of a 3-year plan.
Thank you for that. Okay, anything else from anybody else? No? Excellent. Lisa, thank you very much for that. That's really helpful. That takes us on to item 13, the date of the next meeting, which is
Yeah,
on Friday.
Sheree Wolf was waving a hand.
Sorry?
Sheree Wolf was waving a
I've got
hand.
my hand up, Alan.
There we are, I didn't see it. Right, Sherry, go ahead.
Hi, I was just really some observations. I think throughout the meeting, I think it's a common theme. Are we as a committee informed well enough in order to perform our duties? I don't feel I am, and I think Andrew's raised quite a few really prominent questions about that feed into that as well. And so I believe it's on the actions that we have a plan with timings in order to address, I guess, equipping us as a committee to do our duties. And then my second observation then is how the papers are delivered. And it's probably a bit of an opinion, really. Do people prefer to receive it as one big pack?
Can I just stop
Or
you?
would it be...
Hang on, hang on, Sherry, I interject here, sorry. My intention is that I will close the meeting shortly and we will then review the meeting.
Okay.
So your first point and your second point fit neatly into a review of the meeting. You can just hold that for the time being. Okay, so I think we're finished on item 12, which is the internal audit. Our next meeting is on the 17th of January, again with a 9 a.m. kickoff. Unless there is any other unexpected business, as opposed to just reviewing the content of the meeting, which I'll pick up shortly. My intention is to close the meeting formally, to end the recording, and to ask everyone to stay for a few minutes longer so that we can reflect. Any other points that needs to be in